Marshal your troops, O city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. They will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. So they're going to come after you. They are going to come, the Assyrians, right now we're talking about the Assyrians coming after you. They're going to come after you. But you, Bethlehem-Ephratha, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times. Now this is the passage that the leaders of Israel are going to say to Herod in the days of Jesus' young days, to identify where the king is going to come from. This goes back to David's own origin as King David. Let's go back to Ruth. Ruth gives us the story of Ruth and Boaz, and they are the great grandparents of David. In Ruth chapter 4, verse 11, we read, so they get married. Then the elders and all those at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord," so they're talking to Boaz, who has announced his marriage to Ruth. "May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home," that's Ruth, "like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." And then we read down at the end of the chapter, the end of the book, chapter 18, verse 18. This is the family line of Perez, the guy that Judah had, or by Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. So this area that Boaz was living in, and where he married Ruth, and had Obed and Jesse and David, is Bethlehem-Ephratah. So this is David's area, his home area, and it's also going to be where the future king comes from. And right now, this section here is going to kind of blur the lines. Again, this is where it gets tricky, because we're going to be talking about like two different things that occur at different points in history, as though they're happening simultaneously. Okay, we're going to be talking about Israel's upcoming invasion, or not Israel, Assyria's upcoming invasion of Judah, and saying that the one who's coming out of Bethlehem-Ephrathah, which is Jesus Christ, 700 years later, is the one who's going to stand up and fight you all. That's not actually how it happens. And that, again, is why it gets difficult, and we have to be careful about how we interpret and approach these prophecies, because we're going to be having a couple of different things here. They're going to be kind of blended together, and it seems like it's one event, but it's not. So we're marshaling our troops, O city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. They will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. Now here he's talking about the Assyrians who are on their way to attack them, like they had just got done attacking and destroying Samaria. But you, Bethlehem-Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come from me one who will rule over Israel. Now David had come from there already, so they already had a precedent for that. And somebody else is going to come too at some point in time. They are not thinking it's going to be 700 years later, but that's what we know from the New Testament. His origins are from old, from ancient times. Now that's tricky. That whole time concept is tricky, because this has a couple of different meanings here. We know from the New Testament that Jesus' origins go back to the beginning, to before the beginning even. In the beginning was the Word, and this is the beginning of John. And the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That ties into Genesis 1, which literally says in the beginning. So John is identifying this figure as being there at the beginning, even before the beginning, so his origins go back before the beginning. But we also are referring to David. The ancient times here could refer to the time of David, which would have been about 300 years earlier, because David is from this area. So someone else is coming from this area, like David did, in his origins in ancient times. That's just, again, where it gets kind of tricky and hard to, you have to be aware of these things. Therefore, Israel will be abandoned, until the time when she who is in labor gives birth, and the rest of his brothers return to join the Israelites. I have to admit, I honestly don't know what that means. We seem to be talking about Israel giving birth to this king. Somewhere down the road, this king, this leader from Bethlehem-Ephratha is going to come out. And that would seem to be supported by the vision and revelation of a woman giving birth to a male child who stands for Jesus. So this nation is going to produce this king. It is being personified as a woman giving birth to this ruler. But I don't know exactly what it means about the rest of the brothers returning to join the Israelites and the Israel being abandoned until then. I have to admit, I'm not totally clear on that. That's one of those verses that even I am like, again, this is tough. This is legitimately tough stuff here. So I'm not entirely clear on how to explain that verse in its entirety. He will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord. This guy, this one from Bethlehem-Ephrathah. In the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they will live securely, for then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth, and he will be their peace. When the Assyrian invades our land, and marches through our fortresses, we will raise against him 7 shepherds, even 8 leaders of men. That's going to happen. Again, we're going to read about that in the historical account when we go back to that in the days of Hezekiah. They dealt with this. This was a legitimate issue that they dealt with at that point in time. Now, this could be referring to more than just that one incident. This could be referring to any enemies that invade their land, the Babylonians yet to come, or whoever else. But in this case, we are referring specifically to the people who are going to do this imminently. They will rule the land of Assyria with the sword. The land of Nimrod with drawn sword. Now, Nimrod established a kingdom that includes the capitals of what would be Assyria and Babylon someday. We can read about Nimrod way back, near the beginning of Genesis, after the flood. Genesis 10. Genesis chapter 10, verse 8. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And in Hebrew, I think the word Nimrod translates, it has the same consonants as the word rebel. So it's like a mighty rebel before the Lord. MRD, I think is what it is. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, which is where Babel is going to be, Babylon. The Tower of Babel is built there, and Babylon, the new kingdom of Babylon in later days is going to be there. Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, and Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh and all his other cities. So Assyria and Babylon, which are the 2 greatest enemies of Israel in the Old Testament, both ultimately were cities founded in the initial kingdom of Nimrod, way back in the generation after the flood. So that's what we're referring to here. This king, will deliver us from the Assyrian when he invades our land and marches into our borders. Now, Jesus is not going to be there physically when the Assyrians invade their land. Now, we're going to read about this in the account of Hezekiah as we read, Kings and Chronicles and Isaiah. Okay, but Jesus is going to be born 700 plus years from now. So this passage is talking about this king coming out of Bethlehem, but the march of Assyria takes place 700 years before that. So we're definitely blurring the timelines here. We can't get too finicky about the timelines here. The remnant of Jacob will be in the midst of many peoples, like dew from the Lord, like showers on the grass. So the faithful ones of Jacob. The remnant stands for the faithful ones, the ones who survive, which do not wait for man or linger for mankind. The remnant of Jacob will be among the nations in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among flocks of sheep, which mauls and mangles as it goes, and no one can rescue. That could refer to the Jewish people being scattered and living among the nations, which they did do. That's what happened to them. And even after the return from exile, a lot of the Jews stayed in the lands where they had been settled. A lot of them did. Like in Acts 2, the people are there in Jerusalem because it's coming from other nations because that's where they lived. Their descendants or their ancestors, I should say, would have been taken to these other nations for one reason or another, and they just stayed there. Not all of them came back, even after the exile, not all of them came back. And they would form these synagogues. That's where they came up with the idea that the synagogue teaching system, which, when Acts starts and the church goes out, the Jewish Christians at the time go to synagogues first. That's their default preaching style for at least the first generation or two of the church. So it could be a reference to that. It could be a reference to literally descendants of Jacob being scattered amongst the nations and being in the midst of the people as a blessing to the people around them. It could be referring to that. It could also be referring figuratively to the days of the church, when the church becomes the remnant of Jacob. The Christians go out and convert people, and then they become part of the kingdom of God and added to the family of God. And that could be referring to that too. One way or another, it's not referring to something that's going to happen physically at the end of time. Okay? That's not what it's referring to. Your hand will be lifted up in triumph over your enemies, and all your foes will be destroyed. And that day, declares the Lord, I will destroy your horses from among you. I will demolish your chariots. I will destroy the cities of your land and tear down all your strongholds. Now, he's not saying this is a bad thing, by the way. Sometimes he's saying this as a message of judgment and destruction. In this case, he's actually not. He's saying that you're not going to need these things anymore. I'm going to get rid of them, and you're not going to need them. This is a blessing to them. They're not going to have to rely on their strength, and they shouldn't have in the first place, and they're not going to any longer, and they're not going to even need to. I know that because of what he goes on to say afterwards, how the rest of this passage plays out. I will destroy your witchcraft, and you will no longer cast spells. I will destroy your carved images and your sacred stones from among you. You will no longer bow down to the works of your hands. I will uproot from among you your Asherah poles and demolish your cities. I will take vengeance in anger and wrath upon the nations that have not obeyed me. So this is all a message of blessing. Even though it sounds like a message of destruction, and in a sense it is. This is meant to be a good kind of destruction, that we're cleansing the land of all these things that are tripping us up. These sources of idolatry that we are being lured into temptation by.